and welcome to episode 384 of the Awesome Comics Podcast, a place where the small press makes one hell of a big noise. I'm Vince Hunt. I have a very creaky chair that I need to replace, but as always...
I thought that was my chair.
No, it's my chair. It's just as straight up, I mean, like an office kind of chair, but it sounds like it's an old rocking chair from the 1800s. But
that was your arse.
No, that makes a different kind of noise. More like the aliens from War of the Worlds. Anyway, joining me as always is the creator of the webcomic Vanguard, Dan Butcher.
Hello.
And the man with a bigger pull list than Stretch Armstrong, it's Tony Esmond.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
How are you all? You can't respond.
I'm thinking of reducing my pull list.
Oh, what? So it's only like 150 comics a week?
Well, no, because I've got into that DC thing where you get the comics a month later.
I said you just gave the person who runs Gosh a stroke.
Oh, attack.
Yeah. But don't worry, folks. His pull list is still enormous.
Yeah.
But yes, welcome to the show. We've got a wonderful guest that we'll get an interview that we'll get stuck in.
We just finished, didn't we? I'm very excited.
Yes.
You'll learn so much.
I feel like we could have gone on and on and on.
Yeah. Oh man, that wasn't even a tenth of my notes.
No, I could tell.
Yeah.
And as such, we're not going to mess about with the beginning bit. Although, I mean,
we will mess about. But
I mean, some people that don't mess about are our lovely sponsors. Who are they?
Nicely done.
Comic House.
Comic House. Yes, the wonderful indie comic marketplace that loves indie comics as much as we do, and you do. Well, we hope you do, because that's why you're listening to the show, I think.
Yeah.
If you go to comichouse.com, you see there's a huge collection of titles on their database. If you self-publish, you can add your titles on there as well. Just another avenue to get your work out there. You have an app, which is basically like Netflix for comics. Only £3 a month, and you get access to an ever-growing library of digital indie comics. Just last week, I recommended a couple of things from there, and there's loads of great stuff, as well as our stuff and past and future guests, etc. What stuff is on there at the moment, Dan?
There's a new title on there, which I've got to say has piqued my interest. It's called Recipe for Ascension, Volume 1, Issue 1. And in the beginning, there was Dartmouth. And this is from 1951 comics. And they're hailing from Canada. And the story synopsis goes as this. A 50-year romp of a star-crossed couple chosen to be ladies of the paradigm switch between organic to non-organic world. Written by a chap called Bob Dobbs.
Bob Dobbs. Well done, Bob Dobbs.
That's going to be a difficult wank.
Sorry, the character's called Bob Dobbs. It's written by a chap called J.S. Wenzel.
That sounds more like a writer.
J.S. Wenzel, fuck you, Bob Dobbs. Did you say was it Darkness in the title or Dartmouth?
In the beginning, there was Dartmouth.
I thought that was it. That really
He's never been to Dartmouth, then, is it? It's quite nice here.
I love a play on words.
You haven't said that for about 100 episodes.
I know.
Is there a Dartmouth in the US? I presume there is.
Must be, mustn't there?
Yeah.
They nick everything, don't they?
I'll just send you the cover for that. I think you can get an idea, a link to it. I think you can get an idea for the cover of the book. But I'm going to look forward to checking it out on the app because I don't know what the fuck that's going to be. I really don't.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, God only knows what that is. Looks like a fucking bit of modern art.
Yeah, so that is just another reason to go onto Comic House. Yeah,
who is that weird bloke in it?
All that and more. It's probably Bob Dobbs.
Yeah, probably. Dobbsy.
But,
the Dobster.
Yeah. There's a 14-day free trial, so you can go on and find out who the Dobster is and what he's up to, and dive head first into the amazing world of small press that we talk about every week, as well as the Dobbs. So check out...
Mine's a pint. All right, Dobbs.
Check out comichouse.com.
I was going to say, before we start...
Like that name.
Yeah, we start the interview. I did make an off-color sex joke at the start of the interview, but our guest didn't notice, so it was good we just...
Oh, did you?
That's not like you, Dan.
No.
Yeah, I think he'd have been all right for it. He was having a laugh.
Yeah.
You're so reserved normally, Dan.
I'm not sure if you picked it up, Tony, but...
I'm not sure. I might have to have a listen back.
Didn't really listen back.
Yeah. Well, while they're listening back, they'll be listening back at the same time as you're listening now to this fantastic interview with the one and only Paul Kupperberg.
Okay, it's very exciting. We've been heavily hinting this week on the Slack about this week's guest. He's written, we'll be asking him. He's written over 1,000 comics, if you can believe that. As well as being one of the greats, he's also written for and edited so many of the legends of comics. This is our opportunity to talk to one of comics' most prolific creators and advocates, and pick up some useful writing tips. So some of the titles: the Superman family of books, Justice League, E-Man, Vigilante. We're definitely going to be talking about that.
Yeah.
Doom Patrol, Scooby Doo, many, many more, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Kupperberg. How you doing, Paul?
Good. How are you?
Good, man. This is very, very exciting for us. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
We're
massive fans.
Dull lives.
We've had 5 minutes for you.
I love the fact that Scooby Doo was on the end of that list as well, wasn't it, Tony?
I love Scooby Doo, man. It was Scooby Doo was a ball to write.
Right. Who was it? Joe Staten drawing it at the time, or
Joe drew some of it. There was another guy who drew a lot of them called Fabio Laguna.
Cool.
Who just did brilliant stuff on Scooby Doo. He's gone on. He does a lot of coloring books and coloring and that type of stuff and kids books. But he did some beautiful work on it. So did Joe. I always love working with Joe.
Yeah, Joe's great. I tell my wife she looks like Velma from Scooby Doo, Paul. And I got Joe Staten to do a drawing of her once when I was in New York.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and she wasn't happy. She wasn't happy about it. Yeah.
Is she ever, Tony?
I put it up in the bathroom. She wasn't happy then either. You know what I mean?
The drawing.
Yeah. I'm always
Sorry.
I enjoyed writing them. They were, like you get to write these goofy little mysteries that don't have to make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah. And I found as I got older, there's a newfound appreciation I had for the artists who have to do those books that are based on animations. It's not like they have to, that style. It has to look like the animated style, hasn't it? And that takes quite a lot of skill rather than just making it your own. You can't make it your own. I guess in your way, you were right. A writer has more freedom in that way with a.
Well, that's partially true, but you'd be surprised. Like I looked at this stuff real carefully from the different people who drew it off my scripts, and there are there is identifiable in their own ways as Carl Barks was on the Duck Stories. I can just pick these guys out of a lineup, a lot of them, because they do have their Joe Staten's line is so much different than Fabio's line, and they're doing the same characters, but they're approaching them in very different ways. So
okay, interesting. We are going to get to some IP chat in a bit because you've actually worked on Dread as well. Am I right in saying, Paul?
Yes. My first contact with 2000 AD was back in the early 90s. I actually did a strip for 2000 AD when
nice.
When Richard Burton was editor.
Yeah.
So I did it. Yeah, it was a strip called Trash.
Cool.
Like an environmental dread. But yeah, years later, DC got the license, and somebody remembered that I had written a story for 2000 AD, and they went, well, he should edit this stuff then.
I get you. Good stuff. So, which was post the Stallone movie, wasn't it? It was kind of in that style, I guess.
It was. Well, yes and no. I mean, we didn't follow the movie or anything, but it was during that time. I also got to edit the movie adaptation.
Okay.
By Andy Helfer and drawn by Carlos Esquerra, which was
wow.
Was a
trip.
I got to meet Carlos and have a lunch with him when he was in the States one time during that period. So very cool just to admit that guy. He was such a sweetheart.
The one he's the big deal over here, man. In English comics, he's the one.
Oh, sure.
Often, yeah.
Every reason why.
Yeah, exactly. Agreed.
But yeah, so we didn't want to do well. I mean, the 2000 AD approach is to strips is uniquely 2000 AD. American comics is different, so we did it like American comics, and I'm proud of the work we did for the most part. I thought Andy Helfer wrote some great stories, and Michael Avon Oeming was did some really cool, interesting art.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I like his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It just didn't work here, but I kind of got that feeling all along. there was the guy who was marketing the Dread movie here, same guy who had marketed the Teenage Ninja Mutant Turtles,
Right.
And he was insistent that Dread was going to be the next big thing, and he was just pushing it. And I said to him, no. I'll bet you all my money against all your money that doesn't happen. He didn't take the bet.
That's a shame. Yeah.
Yeah. But
well, let's if you don't mind, Paul, let's rewind a bit, because
sure.
I think what people listening to this will find interesting is you actually started writing comics at a very young age, but before that you started in the fan press, didn't you? And you were involved. I've heard you say, was Paul Levitt's a sort of school boyfriend of yours? You were friends of his when you were youngsters, weren't you?
Paul and I met in middle school.
Wow. Okay.
School, it was then called, in ninth grade.
So was it you and Paul both then got the gig of working on the Comic Reader? Is that right? Was that the first thing that happened, or?
Well, what happened was we were two random, fans in a junior high school that had three random fans, going to it. We ran into each other. We met through the third guy, and we became friends and started hanging out and producing crudzines of our own on Xerox and it was just, awful typical 15, 16-year-old stuff.
Cool.
And then an opportunity came up. There was Don and Maggie Thompson. I don't know if you know who they are.
Yeah.
But they were they're legendary American fans and fanzine publishers. And Maggie later went on to publish to be the editor of that big tabloid magazine about comics. I'm
Comics International.
blanking on the name.
In the Comics Journal, no?
Anyway, yeah, no, not the Journal. The
Comics Feature.
The other one. The newspaper side.
Not the Comics Reader, is it? I'm trying to think what it's called. Yeah, I know the one you mean. Yeah, I know the one you mean. And yeah.
Anyway, at the time in 1971, they were doing a mimeograph fanzine called Beautiful Balloon, in which they reported the news monthly and the comic book news. And they were going to be retiring the fanzine because they had young kids and all that. It was getting to be too much. And Paul and I just saw an opportunity to try and jump in. We lived in New York, so we had access to publishers, and we had a rudimentary knowledge of putting together a crappy looking little publication. And, so we did that. We literally got this whole thing started with $16.
Nice.
We went photo offset. We decided we'd go big time.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about the process you had to go through about writing and rewriting, and
God, that sounded like a nightmare.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was. You have to type everything out, and if you want to do justified columns, you have to retype it to adjust extra spaces in each line to make the columns justified. And then you had to use we use things like rubber cement and later glue sticks to paste these typewritten strips that we cut out and put them on blue line boards with
that's cut and paste, isn't it? That's proper cut and paste.
It was actual cut and paste, and then there was press type to contend with. It was a rub off type that we created titles with and things like that. It was just a whole it was a lot of work, but we did it. We were in high school and we had the energy and we just wanted to do these fanzines. It was all kind of in service of one of these days breaking into the business. But we were just focused on this stuff. I had to turn down working for the school newspaper because I was too busy making fanzines.
Good man.
That were going to, that were read by more people than ever read the school newspaper.
Now, when we first chatted, Paul, and suggested coming on and everything, I sort of see you as a DC guy, and I know that did you and Paul take the DC tour a couple of times as well? Is that right?
Yeah, not together.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we went on DC tours separately, but yeah, we both made it up there for that. I think the first one was like in 1968. I was
Wow.
13, and yeah, it was
Do you
it
remember
was.
who you met on that tour at all?
I remember a few people: Saul
Yeah.
Harrison, Murphy Anderson, Neil
Wow.
Adams.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, and well, Neil and Murphy used to work in the office regularly.
Yep.
Okay.
They just like getting out of the house and having some place to go, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And for DC, it worked because they had these guys who were sitting there, mostly doing their own freelance. But when you needed a correction, an art correction, there was one Superman artist and one, and
Yeah.
one Batman artist. So
And that was the period we were getting those amazing Neil Adams Superman covers. I'm guessing around that
yeah,
time.
that was when he
Yeah.
was still he was still a newbie.
Wow. Okay.
He was still what was he 20, 26, 27, whatever it was, 28.
Yeah.
And but always in a jacket and tie, and and Murphy too.
Yeah.
That
All
seems
those guys
nuts.
I mean, back in when you went up to the office, you'd see a bunch of middle-aged guys wearing short sleeve white shirts and ties.
Yeah. I love that look. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah. But then
Except
only
for
3 years
Robert
later that
Cannigan.
changed. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Bob Cannigan, he was always beautifully dressed in tweeds and turtlenecks and scarves and cashmere coats.
Now, even though I see you as this DC guy. I mean, I think it's fair to say most of your work's been done
Oh
with
yeah,
them. Your first work was with, was it Charlton? Was it your first work?
Charlton Comics, yeah.
Yeah, which I think is Scary Tales 3. I think I've got written
Fairy
down here.
Tales 3, yes, that was
Yeah.
it.
So how did that come about, Paul?
Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Yeah, no, I was listening to the album and I wrote those stories, and it was no, it was the aim all along was to somehow doing something but be in comic books.
Right.
Okay.
And my brother had already started working in comics. He was in DC's production department for a while.
Okay.
And he did some penciling. He moved over to Marvel.
Yeah, I've got a page of your brothers literally opposite me now. A page from Master of
really?
Kung Fu. Yeah, yeah, it's a great
wow.
page, man. Yeah, love that page.
Cool.
Yeah.
But they were more tolerant of him at Marvel, so he went over there. Trust me, really. And and I grew up. I mean, I literally started reading comic books before the Marvel as we know it existed.
Yeah.
I was reading comic books in reading them. I was 4 or 5 years old in 59 and 60, and I was into comic books. I mean, I didn't read them per se, but I
know what you mean.
follow the stories. I loved Wonder Woman by Kanigher and Andrew Esposito, which was a weird little book back in those days.
Yeah.
It was had a lot of fairy tale kind of stuff going on, and
Okay.
genies and Wonder Tot, and so it was a great book for for little kids. And then I gradually I saw Superman on the old cartoons, the 1940s cartoons on TV, and then I kind of eventually matched up those black and white images on a 1960 television set to the color one on the newsstand in the candy store around the corner, and
Oh, good. So were you drawing at the time as well? You did some drawing as well.
I didn't draw. I fan drew.
Okay.
I didn't. I always described it as like I was like a talented 12-year-old, but I never got any better than that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So when did you realize that you could write these things? I mean, that's always the story we hear from people. They sort of realize, oh, these things are written by someone and then handed to an artist and stuff like that. Was there that revelation for you?
I don't think so. I kind of, I don't know why, but I kind of had a realistic, there was kind of an artistic background in my family. My grandmother was a painter and later a sculptor, and
Wow.
my father was a photographer, and he used to, have a home. He used to develop his pictures in the bathroom with a red light bulb, and So I was kind of surrounded by the creation of things. So I kind of understood that there were people behind it. Um, and then when I was like 7 or 8, I started kind of writing and drawing my own little comics, on loose leaf paper and
Yeah.
notebook paper. Um, and it was just kind of, I guess, having been so, looking at so many of them and starting to read them, it kind of just sunk in. The form
Mm.
just kind of, I absorbed it.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I know. I've heard the quote from you that there's no one way to write a comic book story. There's only your way. And was it were you sort of self-taught around that? I'm guessing.
Well, yeah. I mean, there was nobody else to teach anything anyway in the early
Yeah.
60s. There were no books. Comic books were still, the audience were 8 to 13-year-olds, and then you grew up.
If only, eh?
I think there's something to be said that I think it's exactly the way it is now, that like you can tell when someone has written a comic book and they haven't read any comic books.
Yeah, agreed, man. Totally.
I think because there's a certain rhythm, isn't there? There's the way the panels.
It's instinctual,
flow.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very different format a very different form of writing than most others. I mean, I've done, I've written fiction and nonfiction. I've written short stories. I've written novels. I've written screenplays. They're each their own thing, and comics is very uniquely its own thing. You have to have a an artistic eye in even an artist who can't draw anything still has to have a kind of a trained artistic eye in their mind to be able to visualize what they need for the story and to be able to communicate that to an artist.
Yeah, a visual imagination and a visual memory are the two things I think a lot of the time, aren't they? To be able to translate it on a page. Yeah. So Superman, is it Superman Family you ended up doing the first one? Superman Family 182, was that your first DC work?
It was the first of the of Dollar Comic Superman Family issues.
Of course, right.
And I did a World of Krypton story, kind of Christmas on Krypton, which was notable only for the fact that it was penciled by Marshall Rogers.
Wow. Okay, that's great. So back then, did you get to interact with the artists at all? Or, I mean, we hear these stories about, Kirby hadn't met Joe Sinnott, till decades later, almost. Did you meet these guys at all?
I met most of them, but not necessarily in the course of doing specific jobs.
Right.
We were, my first work was in 1975, and it was still for the most part an assembly line.
Yeah.
Very few people, very few creative teams got together, and worked out stories. Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson on Swamp Thing were the exception rather than the rule.
Okay.
For the most part, you went home and wrote the script that you'd worked out with the editor, and then the editor would pass it on to the artist, and the next thing you would see would be the finished art.
Wow. Okay.
So, when people say, what was it like working with Kirby? It was the same as it was working with Dick Ayers.
Right. Okay.
I wrote a script. I handed it to the editor, and it came back and was like, "Whoa, Jack Kirby, cool."
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
So did you get to meet Jack eventually, or chat about it with him at all, or?
No, never about that. I met Jack in the '80s at a San Diego convention.
Right.
There was a birthday party for him that year. There was a whole.
Cool.
Nice
one. Well,
and and most of the conversation with Jack was, you want to talk to him about being freaking Jack Kirby, and he's such a modest little guy that all he's doing. No, it ain't me, it's you kids. You're the guys doing the great stuff these days. And it's like, shut up, take the compliment.
That's kind of nice to hear, though. I mean, he's had Stan in his ear for all those decades. I suppose it's going to be a bit like that, isn't he?
Most of these guys were just really nice people. They there were a few jackasses along the way, but even they were like, this, Bob Kanigher, pretty much a jackass, but man, was he fascinating. You know, he was so interesting. He was, he was a close talker. I don't know. There was some truth in every story he told, but only some. And but it was fascinating. It's like, here's this guy he wrote The Metal Men. He created The Metal Men and wrote that first issue over a weekend.
Cool.
Wow. Back and read that story. He's created this whole, little family of complex characters and it all comes across in that very first story.
That's great.
A really good writer.
Yeah. Well, let's run through. I've got a little list of people you've worked with, and I if I didn't get the chance to ask you about it, Paul, I would be upset. So, first off, Julie Schwartz. So, I've heard you describe him as being a little bit scary. Is that right?
He was at first. I mean, he was. Marvel fans had Stan Lee, and Stan was this, jocular, kind of fun uncle thing.
Yeah.
Kind of thing going on, and Julie was not. Julie played Perry White. Julie did the whole gruff thing.
Okay.
And I grew up, his comics were the best comics. No doubt. He was the guy who created, who paved the way for the creation of modern comic books. His stories, even through the 50s in the Westerns and the science fiction stuff, were really good. They didn't play to that same kind of choke, how ironic, twist ending stuff that Stan was doing all the monster books at Atlas, and then his superhero stuff. You go back and reread that first couple of years of Fantastic Four. It's really not that sophisticated at all.
Right.
In fact, it is downright juvenile. It is rife with like stuff that the first of all, why aren't they dead of cancer? Because everything, don't worry about Johnny sitting on the sofa, it's made of asbestos. Really?
Right. Okay.
Have some popcorn. Sit down. And the thing, he couldn't just walk through a door, he had to bash through walls. And there was a family dynamic in it, but it was a family really without parents. It was more the Bowery Boys,
Yeah.
With Reed being, Leo Dorsey, which is the strangest image I've ever come up with.
Well, I'm guessing. I'm guessing you were a Doom Patrol fan at the time, were you? Because I know they pretty much came out around the same time, didn't they?
They did, but I didn't discover the Doom Patrol until after they were canceled.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
I found them in back issues, and by the time I saw my first story, which was a crossover with the Challengers of the Unknown, the book had already been canceled, so I had to go and dig through a few old comic shops that were around and find back issues.
Cool. And then you were part and parcel of bringing them back in Showcase and then into their own title. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I love the characters. I said that Julie Schwartz's books were, even his superhero stuff, was a lot more sophisticated, I think, than most of the Marvel stuff of the same era. But Doom Patrol, Arnold Drake's Doom Patrol, was the closest to a Marvel comic that DC ever published. The dynamics were, Arnold recognized what was going on at Marvel, I think, and was kind of doing that stuff, and even Bob Haney to a little
bit of an X-Men vibe, wasn't there? Yeah.
I mean, and again, I don't think the Doom Patrol is so much a takeoff on the X-Men, and neither a takeoff of either, because they were just coincidentally were published at the same time.
It was almost the same week, I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
I think it was the same. No, I think it was.
No.
I think there was like a 2 or 3 month difference, but I don't.
Oh, okay.
Know. Okay. But however you work the timing, there's no way that Stan heard about this and would have had time to duplicate it and have the book in production and out that quick. It was just
I get it.
Coincidence.
Cool.
And but I always thought that the Doom Patrol had more of a Fantastic Four vibe to it. More
Okay.
of that family, that family thing going on than the X-Men. But
Yeah, I read the run you did with Steve Lytle yesterday. It's spectacularly good. Yeah, he was great, man. What a great artist.
yeah, he did some beautiful work on that.
Yeah.
It unfortunately it didn't last as long as it should have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, agreed. A couple of other people I wanted to mention to you. So, you're credited with writing the first ever miniseries as well, which is World of Krypton with Mr. Chaikin, I believe, wasn't it? Is that right?
Yes. It was originally written to be an arc in the Revive Showcase run.
Okay.
And it was supposed to coincide with the Superman movie, but the Superman movie got pushed back, and then Showcase got canceled. And then when the movie did finally was on its way, they found out they couldn't really do tie-ins with it because of some contractual hassle with
Okay.
So who wrote the original
Okay.
screenplay. So then they remembered they had this in the drawer, and there's an ad for it. It's they don't use the word miniseries, but it was it was published and sold as a limited 3-issue run.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a massive Chaikin fan as well, and
Yes.
I think you were almost neighbours, weren't you? Is that right? You live near each other or something?
Well, in Brooklyn.
Right.
He lived in in one section of Brooklyn. It wasn't far. I mean, it was in an area me and my friends would go to often because a few mile, like a mile or so, mile and a half away from where Howard and a whole bunch of other guys, was,
Val Merrick and those guys, yeah.
Yeah, well, I said to Howard when I interviewed him for the book that's coming up, I said it's like you guys traveled in packs in those days, and he said, yeah, well, we had to because we were so wrapped up in our own little fantasy world there that if we didn't travel together, we would have all been out in the wilderness.
But, and that was Upstart Studios, wasn't it? I think Simonson was there, and
yeah. I mean, it wasn't Upstart Studios yet, but
okay, right.
Yeah, or maybe it was. Don't remember. Howard was friends with my brother.
Okay,
who was also part of that pack for a while.
I get you.
And so I've known Howard since before I got into the business. Have pictures of him having dinner at our house.
That's brilliant.
Brooklyn, so
that's cool.
But and actually, my brother did the layouts for that miniseries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Howard finished the art, and then Murphy inked the first two, and then what was it, Frank McLaughlin, the last one.
Okay. Wow, you remember things, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember what I had for breakfast.
I couldn't tell you that, but
one of the other things that has got something to do with the people you worked with is the creation. I've just reread Arian, Lord of Atlantis, as well this week, and I think that's an interesting story from the point of view of being a freelancer. So, if I could maybe lay it up, would you mind explaining what happened? Because as I understand it, you created Arian, he appeared in Warlord, then got his own series, and then you got taken off it. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. I created Arion for backup in Warlord. They needed a new thing, so I pitched that.
Yeah.
And it sold, and then after a while, it got its own title, and there was a change of editors, and it went from Laurie Sutton, who was the originating editor, to Ernie Colon.
Yeah.
Who was a mystery as to why he was an editor. And I handed in my plot for number 3, continuing on the story that had been going already, and I got it back from him with this doesn't work, fix it. What do you mean? I don't know, it just doesn't work, fix it. And so I went home and I fixed it, I guess. Well, actually, I didn't because still not right. Try something else. Any suggestions? No, but this. And then after my third try, he was like, he well, he didn't call me. He had Dick Giordano call me and tell
Okay.
me I was off the book because obviously I couldn't give him what he wanted on my creation.
But I mean, these days, people would be throwing themselves on swords on Twitter if that happened to them. Do you know what I mean? It would be a non-stop drama. I think I'm right, boys, wouldn't I?
Totally.
Unless everybody liked what Doug Munch was doing more than what I did. But
did you have a chat with Doug about that? I'm a massive fan of his as well. I mean, he's a great
I am
writer.
too. No, I never spoke to Doug about it. He really had nothing to do with it.
Right. Okay.
He was just a guy getting a gig.
I mean, that's to me, that's almost part of it being a business and not being this sort of group of friends who are just making comics together. It is a business, isn't it?
It is a business.
Yeah.
And even Dick was apologetic, but he said, "Look, I got to back my editors, otherwise,
Okay.
And then after 8 months, Ernie was I think the technical term is fired. Joe Orlando was given the title to edit.
Right.
And Joe called me up and said, "Why aren't you writing the book you created?" And I said, "I don't know. You'll have to ask Ernie." I never got a good answer. And he said, "Well, whatever. You're back on the book. You're late." So I had to do as my editor for 6 or 8 months, and that was enlightening.
Yeah, I mean, is that? I mean,
Joe's a guy who's going to defend the creator.
Yeah.
He understood what had happened, and
I mean, was that? It doesn't sound from the way you tell it, Paul. Was that a clash of personalities? Was that something like that, or was it just an ill-informed editor?
No, I got along fine with him. He was never any problem I knew of. I think he just wanted to give a gig to Doug. And
right, okay.
And then years later, when I was the editor of Judge Dredd, Ernie showed up at my office door, telling me he had just spoke to Dick Giordano, and Dick said I should give him the assignment on Judge Dredd.
Right.
So doubting this, I said, "Why don't you wait here?" And I went and talked to Dick, and Dick said, "No, I told him he should go up and talk to you about it." And,
right. Okay.
And so I went back up and I said, "Well, now that that's cleared up, sorry, I won't be. It's not going to be happening. I've decided to go with Doug Munch instead." So.
Yeah. Now, as part of that story, did Joe Kubert take over something on that book? Because I think I read an anecdote of you saying he said there's too much magic, and you said, "Well, it's a book about magic," but he sort of put you straight around it a bit. Is that right?
Yeah, he took over editing the title when Ernie left.
Right.
So having Joe Kubert as your editor is very intimidating. And Joe wasn't the kind of guy who would say, "Do this." He was the kind of guy who would go, "You know what might be good," and then say something, wise and cryptic, and let you figure it out. And he said to me, "There's too much magic in this book," and I said, "But it's a comic book about a sorcerer in ancient Atlantis." He goes, "Yeah, I know, but it's too much magic. Why don't you get rid of the magic?" I was like, "Yeah, buddy, okay, you're Joe Kubert and I'm not." So I did. I dropped, I got rid of the magic, and within an issue or two, I saw exactly what he meant. It was that I was using the magic as a crutch. Anytime Ariana got into trouble, presto changeo, everything's cool. So
and that's when you took his powers off him for a bit, didn't you? Is that right?
Yeah. So
good.
It was good advice. It was good for the character, and it was good for me as a writer too.
I'm guessing it must be. Yeah. But there's that.
I come from a culture. I grew up on these dumbass 1950s Superman and Batman stories. The Superman fighting guys in suits and Batman fighting aliens and science fiction monsters. And so even though I started writing in an era where people were starting to say stuff and do something with these stories, I was kind of, all starry-eyed about just being in the business. So,
Yeah.
I knew that Mort Weisinger stories were silly and juvenile and nothing that we should try to emulate these days. But I also wasn't doing the kind of stuff, guys like Gerber or Engelhart were doing, which was, trying to deal with what was going on in the world and in life.
Yeah.
Even though they were doing it in this kind of, artificial world of superheroes and fantasy.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely going to touch on the fact that you brought the real life into the DC universe. I think I hinted at it in a message to you earlier today. But just quickly, just a couple more people I wanted to mention. You worked on Supergirl. Can I just say DC needs to get off their arse and put a lot of your Superman stories on the app because they're just not on there. But what is on there is the Supergirl. Yeah, it does. But what is on there is the Supergirl stuff. And you worked on that. And talk about power dynamics. You worked on there with Carmine Infantino as well, who before this was the big cheese, wasn't he?
Well, Carmine, he was my Jack Kirby. I grew up on the DC stuff. I read the Marvels, but they were kind of, they were secondary. And Carmine drew every great comic that I grew up with in the 60s. Most of them. The other ones were drawn by Gil Kane.
Yeah.
So, Flash and Adam Strange and his Batman stuff in the mid 60s. It was just also he was the artist. He was the guy. And and I'd known him a little, when I was on staff in the 70s and he was still publisher. But he was out of his depth in that job. He was a really good art director. And I think he did a lot for DC in the 60s when he, kind of took over the managing editor position and, started to help DC get out of the doldrums there.
He's the one who brought Kirby over, isn't he? As I understand it, is that right?
He brought Kirby over in 1970. But before that, he was trying things. He was doing books like, Nelson Bridwell's Secret Six.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, what kind of, that was like nothing DC was publishing in those days.
Okay.
But Carmine took a chance. He had Joe Simon was back and the choice was wrong, but the thinking was right. Well, here's one of the most successful creators in the history of comics. Let's get him back to create new stuff.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Joe was still creating, the Green Team and Prez, but at least it was different. It was an attempt to do something outside the Jack Schiff, Julie Schwartz, Mort Weisinger, Boltinoff box.
Yeah. So you worked on Supergirl with him, but you also worked with Kurt Swan. How was Kurt? Was he? I'm guessing he was a super nice guy. Was he? Or...
Kurt was an absolute sweetheart. Kurt was one of the. I met him a few times. He didn't come to the office much, but and then I was at a convention in Kansas City with him, and then flew home on the same flight with most of the other guests from this show, and Kurt really got the party going at 37.
Nice, good to know.
Yeah. No, Kurt could party. And,
there's a name for the episode, Vince.
So he was. I was living in. I was like a kid growing up on Disney, walking into Disneyland with a free pass.
I can imagine.
There was all these guys. Here was, Carmine and Gil Kane and Kurt Schaffenberger and Schwartz and even the guys who's, like you don't really think of, but there was, Sal Harrison, for Christ's sakes, Sal was the man who worked on Famous Funnies #1. He started, he worked on the start of the comic book industry, the modern comic industry. Jack Adler, a brilliant production man who came up with so many processes that made the books look better and better. Mike Houston and I kind of go between. I said DC was the Cadillac of comic books, and he said, "Well, I think Dell was, but yeah, it's close."
How was Gil to work with? Gil Kane? Did you do much with him?
Well, again, I did one story. Len Wein and I plotted a Green Lantern Corps annual.
Yeah.
And Carmine drew it, and I dialogued it. That was brilliant. That was just beautiful. Here was like the creator of Green Lantern drawing, not only my Green Lantern story, but a Green Lantern story with a Green Lantern that I created in it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But later on, I worked with him on a graphic novel, The Life Story of the Flash, and it nearly killed me. So, when I was the editor of that. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Well, we're going to get to the editor's thing in a minute because that's important, I think, for our listeners as well. That's so good. And then, as I understand it, you started working. Us lot came over, didn't we? The English and the British invaded, and you worked with Dave Gibbons on some Green Lantern as well, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I did some. There was a period there where Len was having trouble with Green Lantern, and
right.
So when Bob Greenberger and I compared notes, we were pretty much writing the book for a few months.
Okay.
One would plot it and the other would dialogue it. And cool, we got paid and always happy to help Len out. But so yeah, I to that extent, Gibbons. Yeah, I worked with Dave.
Oh, nice one. Len Wein, I met him once in New York. He was like the nicest person ever.
Yeah.
What a superb guy. Yeah. Oh, good news. So we're going to quickly talk about a certain vigilante, and then we're going to talk about the editorship, and then we're going to get onto your new books, if that's right, Paul. So I've just reread pretty much the whole of Vigilante over the last few months. I sort of a little blocked down.
Certain vigilante, the vigilante,
yeah. Now you took over post Alan Moore? I think did you write one before, and then you took on after him and Bakey's 2 issue. Is that right?
Yeah, I did a fill-in issue. Yeah, I think
right.
That's right. I think my fill-in issue was like number 16 or something.
Yeah.
It was with Alex Saviak.
Ah, nice. Oh, cool. It had already started quite a bleak turn by that point, had it? Or was that something that you sort of started or just ran with,
I think it was, I mean, it was comic book bleak. Alan's story really kind of, made you go, oh, I see.
Yeah. Drugs and prostitution in that one, wasn't there? I don't know how they got it past the comics code on that one. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't a book. It was
right.
A direct market. It was
of course. Sorry, my bad. Yeah.
And then after that, I was asked to do a fill-in dialogue. I did a dialogue over Marv's plot, and then I think it was either I did a second dialogue job and then I took over the story, or I did the one dialogue and then I took over the book. But yeah, so that was around number 20, 21, and then I ran it out until number 50.
Which was, as I understand it, am I right in saying it was going to be cancelled, but so you decided to go to take it to a different kind of cancellation point, if you see what I'm saying here?
Yeah, I mean, we knew the book was headed for a danger zone, so it was like, well, why not go out on a high point? And so we probably could have gotten a few more issues, but the way things had been, I hadn't intentionally set it up. And I think 36, where we have, Adrian Chase gun down a cop.
Yeah.
And, kind of set him on the road to self-destruction. I don't think I had the suicide ending in mind at the time. But, I just wanted to escalate things and get it going darker.
Yeah.
But it was grim and gritty time. And I was happy to play in the ballpark. I mean, I didn't think everything needed to go grim and gritty, but there were books like Vigilante or Checkmate or whatever that it worked in, and that was fine. But yeah, it was. It
For
was a
those that
challenge.
don't know, who are listening, he kills himself in the last. It's off panel, isn't it? I think, as I recall, but he does kill himself in the last issue.
It's close enough to panel where you see the blood spurting. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's quite challenging, like even
Yeah.
nowadays, that kind of thing.
yeah,
Oh,
well, the artist was Steve Irwin. He did a really nice job.
Really great, man. Yeah, I don't know why he's not talked about more, Steve. He did a splendid job on that series. Yeah, he really did. And you worked with him on Checkmate as well, didn't you? I think, is that right?
Yeah, he co-created. He co-created Checkmate with me.
Yeah, cool. I mean, do you ever think? Because I mean, Vigilante's now turned up. He's been in the Arrow series, and for those of you, I'm guessing but he's also been in the Peacemaker.
Right.
He's been in that as well.
yeah.
I mean, do you ever regret thinking, I wish we hadn't killed him off? He'd have a run again now, or do you think that's what should have happened?
Oh, I think that should have happened, and
Right.
I take perverse pride in the fact that he's one of the few dead DC characters that never got brought back to life.
Yeah, you're not
Yeah.
wrong, man. Yeah,
So,
cool.
when I kills him, I like them to stay there.
Quite right too. Yeah. Well, that leads on. So I'm guessing, did you pitch that to the editor? Did it take some convincing that that's where you wanted to go with it?
No convincing whatsoever. It was,
Okay. Who was your editor? Who was your editor on that?
Mike Gold.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, and Michael with whatever FU gesture anybody comes up with. So
You'd worked with him. You'd done some E-Man for him over at first, I'm guessing, by that point as well, hadn't you?
yeah. I'd known Mike a long time. I was his assistant when he was director of PR at DC in '76, and I worked with him in Chicago on a video magazine and other things. And so yeah, I worked with Mike on a lot of projects until I learned better.
And you also edited. So this is something I know people will want to hear from you about. And just to give some of the titles. So Starman, you edited. Was it the whole Impact line? But it was certainly the Flying Black Hood, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Flying Black Hood. Yeah.
Okay. Dark Stars, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aztec, Impulse, and you also edited at DC and Charlton, didn't you? As well, as I'm right in saying, is that right?
Well, the Charlton stuff was kind of
The latest stuff.
thing that was, a made-up company that Roger McKenzie, Mort Todd, and I put together.
Okay.
Nobody was using the Charlton name since 1985.
I get
So
you.
we just called ourselves
Okay.
Charlton Neo Comics, and we did about 2 or 3 years.
I get you. Yeah.
Publication.
Oh, nice. So when you took over, I think I'm right in saying you'd have an editorial assistant as well. Did you go in it with any sort of ideas? This is how I'm going to run my ship. This is how we're going to, deal with storyline. This is how far in the future we're going to look at stuff. Did you go in with anything like that, or is it sort of, man the decks kind of stuff?
Well, my editorial philosophy, if I had one, was hire really good people and get out of their way.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a great philosophy.
I didn't need to hire.
Yeah.
I didn't need to hire somebody. I had to hold their hand, and I have too much to do. I've got whatever it is, 6 or 8 books a month, and whatever specials and whatever else I'm doing. I don't have time to hold hands. I mean, occasionally I would do it because I found somebody new with promise or something, and felt it was worth the time and effort. But for the most part, if I can hire, I hired John Byrne a few times because John Byrne is real low maintenance.
Oh, nice. Good to know. Yeah.
It's just like, what are you doing this month? I'm gonna do a thing with a guy, and they'll have a fight, and it'll be good. Okay, great. Look forward to it. And then I'd get 20 pages of finished lettered art, and I wouldn't have to do much to it.
Yeah.
So I hired John. If I can have Mark Wade working on, Mark's high maintenance. No, I'm kidding. But Mark knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
No problem. So yeah, I tried to go that way. But there aren't always that many creators of that caliber available.
Yeah. Do you think the role of the editor has changed from what you've seen since your days as one?
I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't been exposed to modern editors, in years, so I don't know what the role is. I know it's undergone changes. I know for a while it was kind of, the power was, well, their power wasn't monolithic. It was monolithic over the creator, but the power over the editors was whatever, guy was in charge of that department, with the overall vision. Um, and Stanley asked that very question, what does an editor do these days? I have no idea. This is in the 90s. And Paul said, well, pretty much the same you did, just encourage, your people to do the best work they can and help guide them. And Stan said, yeah, but, I was too busy writing. I didn't have, time. It's like Paul said, well, take a guy like Dick Ayers. You got work out of Dick Ayers. You got better work out of Dick Ayers than anybody ever could. And Stan went,
Right.
well, what I would do is give Dick a story. He'd say, so what do you want, Chief? And he'd say, well, it's a Western, so I want to see the hoofs flashing and the spurs jingling and the guns, bam, bam, bam. And Dick would get all excited and hyped up and go, yes, sir, and go off and do this great work he did for Stan. And Paul said, when I would give Dick a script, he'd check it off in his little book and go, okay, I'll have this in a week from Tuesday. Will you have something else waiting for me? And he'd go home and draw the thing. But so that's what editors should do, and that's what Stan did.
Right. Yeah, pass that enthusiasm along,
Yes.
sort of thing. Yeah, yeah.
And I think by the time my generation came along and people I was working with, you didn't have to do that anymore. You didn't have to encourage Marty Pesco to write a really great story, because that's what Marty did. It was we came with enthusiasm. We were the first generation who wanted to be there.
There was sort of famously you and Roy Thomas and these sort of guys were the generation of comic fans who
Right.
like sort of tunneled their way into the industry in front of all these dudes in bow ties and pipes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the previous generation, Carmine as a kid, he was a comic book fan. He wanted to do this. But by the time the 50s came around, these guys were embarrassed. Stan would lie to his neighbors and said he wrote children's books. Because he was embarrassed by what he did. We weren't embarrassed. I would say to people, I'm 19 or 20 years old. What do you do? I write comic books. It's like, you really want people to know that? Hell yeah.
One of my favorite pictures I found in one of your books was there's a load of writers, and I was trying to work out who was who in the image, and there was a picture of Mike Grell, and it said Mike Grell, and hidden behind him is Stan Lee. Yeah. And Mike Grell is just like towering over him. Yeah. That was great, man.
No. Stan had hold of Mike's belt and had lifted him off the ground.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. That was brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. This was late 70s at a Chicago con.
Right.
And it was just like, there was, Jeanette Kahn was there, and Stan, and you couldn't see it, but Sal Harrison was peeking out from behind.
Don McGregor, I think, is in the picture as well, and yeah. What dudes! I met Grell at Heroes a couple of months ago. What a geezer! Mm-hmm. What a dude! Yeah. Okay, so we've kept you for quite a while now, Paul. I'm conscious of that, but we do have a lot of people who listen to the podcast who are creators themselves.
Yes,
and I know that your books are very anecdotal. Especially the I never write for money, but I always turn in a manuscript for a check, which is the best title ever.
Yeah,
thank you.
But we thought we'd maybe pick your brains about how you approach a script.
Of course.
Gosh, yeah, thank you. Yeah. What do you do about that blank page? I mean, do you come fully prepared with a box full of tricks and stories and stuff, or do you think, right, I've got to write a Supergirl story today is a blank page? How did your mind work as you approach a story?
Well, back when I was doing serialized comic books when I was monthly comics.
Yeah.
It was kind of, I wasn't a planner. I'm a more, I'm a seat of the pants kind of guy.
Cool.
The most planning I ever did was when I was writing the Life with Archie series, and I had to work out these 6-month arcs for whatever it was, 16 or 18 characters that I was writing, but double that because I was writing two different timelines. One where Archie was married to Betty, and the other where he's married to Veronica.
Yeah.
So that I had to plot out.
Did you get in trouble with a lady in a bookshop because you killed somebody in that comic? Did that happen?
Well, there was a yes. It wasn't for the death of Archie.
It didn't get physical. I'd like to.
No, there was
it was like Misery.
It was the death of Grundy.
That's right. Yeah, I was trying to think who it was. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I wrote about it. It was in a Barnes and Nobles, and I had passed the humor section, and there are my Life with Archie, the collections of graphic novels in the humor section, whereas all the other collections of comics are in the graphic novel section.
Yeah.
So I'm standing there kind of looking at it and shaking my head, and this young lady walks by and asks if she can help me, and I said, yeah, I was just wondering why this is shelved here and not with the graphic novels, where people would go looking for it, not humor, because this isn't really a humor story. And she didn't understand what I was talking about or anything. And along the way I babbled, and different things happen. This is like serious stuff. And again, she has no idea why I'm moaning to her about a freaking Archie comic being in the wrong section. And then I say something about, Miss Grundy dies. I kill Miss Grundy. This is serious stuff. It should be, and that she absorbs, and she kind of gives me this this hateful look. Said, you killed Miss Grundy? It was like, well, she's asking for it. I don't know. It was, yeah. But we also got in trouble with the gay marriage story in number 16.
Okay.
Where this group called Million Moms, which I think is actually 8 moms in a fax machine, got up in arms over, this gay wedding celebration scene on the cover that she saw in Toys R Us, and started this whole, campaign to.
I think I remember this. Yeah, I remember this being about. Yeah,
to get us off the newsstand and to shut this down. And thanks to their protest, it became the first Archie comic ever to sell out its entire print run.
Look at you, still causing shit. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So
good work. So, I mean, another question I thought we would ask is, how do you approach dialogue? I mean, do you snatch things from real life, things you hear on the underground or on the bus or something, how do you approach that? Because, I mean, sort of, I suppose, historically, DC books there was a lot more dialogue and exposition in them compared to perhaps the sort of deconstructed stuff we're seeing these days. How would you approach books? I mean, like Checkmate, which is quite story heavy, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. If you listen, most people speak essentially, the same. There are differences. There are, different phrases and tempos and whatever that people use. But, for the most part, you don't want it to stand out. You don't want it to be obviously, when you do, you phonetically do Southern accent. It just y'all don't want to be doing that kind of thing there, and it looks stupid. So you let them know, the sentence construction may be a little different, and the syntax is different, and you put in there, he said in his heavy Southern twang, or in a voice that reeked of the West Virginia hollers, something like that, to let it be known that there's an accent there. But you don't want to, have to people like stop and try to decipher what the hell you've done with this phonetically.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, you speak quite a lot about in I Never Write for Money about finding your voice. Did you want to just explain what you mean by that, Paul?
You mean the voice of characters or
No, the voice of your own writing. You said,
it's just it's like the way you speak. It's the way you express yourself. Every writer is different. Most writers are not that different enough that you can easily pick them out, but there are, the great ones are ones you just hear a line, and even if you don't know the quote, you can go, wow, that sounds like Hemingway, that sounds like Fitzgerald, that sounds like Faulkner. You can kind of, get the taste of that. And it's just, again, it's just your individual voice. It's the way you speak to the reader on the page. It's most of it, I guess, isn't really a tangible thing, but you can tell the difference. Jack London, he was such a masculine writer. I mean, not just the fact that he was a manly man, which he was, but the fact that his whole way of thinking and expressing himself was just, kind of, big and bold and aggressive. So,
How did you go about finding yours? Was it just literally putting the time and effort in there, doing the
I think there's theory of 10,000 hours. It just takes a long time to kind of keep at it, and it's difficult, more difficult in comics, I think, because you have the pictures that are distracting. The pictures are the main mode of storytelling. People are not reading your words that carefully. They're skimming through word balloons, right?
Right.
You're not really focusing on the word balloons. You're kind of skimming across it as you're absorbing them with the picture. So it's tougher to kind of, find and provide a really strong voice there. But in prose, they're just, it's right out there. You got nothing else.
I mean, having read a lot of your prose recently, especially the stuff like I Never Write for Money and some of the interviews and stuff, you're quite conversational and anecdotal. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. One of my more recent books was called The Devil in Leo Persky.
Right.
And the character of Leo Persky is, I had been an editor and writer for the Weekly World News, the American tabloid that prominently starred Bat Boy and Bigfoot and Elvis sightings.
Brilliant.
Oh yeah, it was great. Best job I ever had. So in Leo Persky is a fictional reporter for the Weekly World News, in a world where everything that paper reports is absolutely true. He's a little nebbishy Jewish guy in his 40s. And I even did a short story about his mother, because what's a nebbish Jewish guy in his 40s without his mother? But he's a monster hunter and a reporter, and he does all this stuff. And it's all very, it's first person, tongue in cheek, totally having fun. And it's just so, that type of stuff is so easy and relaxed for me to write, because that is my voice, is that. So, and even in prose, it's kind of, in nonfiction, still it comes through,
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, it's a really nice read, those books of yours, because they're sort of almost short chapters, like they're almost like essays, aren't they, I suppose?
Yeah, they were originally essays and blog posts and things like that were collected, rewritten and updated and collected. And I also did the Paul Kupperberg's Illustrated Guide to Writing Comics.
Yeah, I must get this. Yeah,
which is a straightforward how-to book, starting from here's what a word balloon is. Here's and they're balloons, not bubbles. Okay, balloons have little tails, have little strings. Bubbles don't. So.
How many people get those mixed up?
Yeah, they do, don't they? Yeah. There's a short story, Paul, of yours, which is how you met a millennial and he sort of explained things to you, which is probably my favourite one of yours. It appeals to my sort of grumpy old bloke outlook on life.
Oh, the one who told me he said he had a great idea for a graphic novel.
I cannot tell you how many times we've been told that at comic conventions. Yeah.
And he tells me this whole thing, it's essentially just the story beats, like, this happens, this happens. And I said, okay, well, that's the plot. Where's the story? And he said, well, that is a story. He starts retelling it. I go, no. Plot is what happens. Story is why. Who is this guy? What, did they kill his dog? Did they, rob his girlfriend? Did they do whatever horrible thing? Why is he doing these things? Oh, I don't know. Well, then you don't have a story.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Did he know who you were at that point?
Yeah. He was. It was at a signing.
Okay.
It was at a signing at a comic shop, and he was, telling me that he was there. That he had me sign stuff, and.
Do you do many cons, Paul? Or?
Not a lot.
No.
I mainly do one. There's one here in Connecticut called Terrificon.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
It's terrific.
I think John Suntress does some panels of that one, doesn't he?
John does. Yeah, John does a lot of stuff there. Yeah, it's a good show. It's big enough that he gets a really good people in. He does concentrate on our generation of
nice
creators. He had Joe Sinnott there regularly. He had Joe Giella still shows up. So he has all these guys and us and Grell and Chaikin and Steranko.
It sounds like my jam. That one, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, good old Steranko.
Yeah. We have something called Syrup of Figs here. I'll explain it to you in a minute. So just a couple of fun questions before we go on to promote your stuff a bit, Paul, because I think it deserves it definitely. Who was your favourite character writing? Who did you write that you just enjoyed the most?
Well, for various and sundry reasons that have little to do with the stories I wrote, except for a handful. Superman, just because he had the most. He was my safety character. I didn't have a happy childhood, particularly,
right,
for various reasons, and Superman was my hero.
Okay, so it's almost like a comfort food writing kind of thing.
Yeah, and just any chance to do Superman, absolutely. But my favorite writing experience overall, over long haul, was that was the Life with Archie.
Okay, yeah.
I thought I did some of my best stuff there, and just and I had reached a point where once I hit stories like Vigilante, which were costume but not superhero, per se, I started finding I was much more interested in writing those stories. That the superheroics kind of took me out of, you can't write a serious story about child abduction or rape or
terrorist attacks or something.
Attacks when you have somebody who can fly in and stop it. When you admit that you're in that universe, well, why the hell isn't Superman here stopping this right now?
Yeah.
So
we were passing around a quote of yours, Paul, about I think it comes as a footnote in one of your books, and forgive me, I can't remember which one it is. Where you said that the only true Superman stories are written by Siegel and Schuster, and everyone else is kind of copying them in a bit. Is that right? Is that the way? I'm right? That's what you thought?
No, exactly. John Byrne and I were talking one day, and we were bitching and moaning about what the young punks had done to our Superman, and that they weren't doing the real Superman anymore, and that just kind of stopped me because I did Superman in the 80s, as did John.
Yeah.
And we had 40, whatever it was, 50 years worth of stories to fall back on.
But the only people ever truly did the real Superman was Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody else could do the real Superman because nobody else created them.
Right.
Period. The end. Everybody else layered something else on top of, on top of that, and then the next guy layered, and the next guy layered, and in the 80s you could still genetically recognize the character as Siegel and Schuster's Superman, but it was so far removed from what they had originally done and intended, and probably even would have been capable of evolving into. Every Superman is, I also say that the golden age is whatever you read when you were 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you were 11 years old and think that Image Comics was the best thing ever, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we get that a lot. Yeah, we hear that a lot.
I mean, comics can be, certainly, like when you get older, it's a very nostalgic medium, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it better be, because you're a grown up, you really shouldn't be reading this stuff anymore.
So true. So true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one last fun question is, what was the character you haven't written yet but you would like to? I know you've not written much for Marvel, have you? Is there anyone over there, for example, you'd like to write?
There's a lot at Marvel. I did do a fill-in issue of Captain America back in the 70s. That was so awful. It was bad enough. It was awful. It was just, I'm sorry I brought it up, because now somebody may go look for it. But
it is on the app. I've found it. Yeah.
But Captain America, I love. He's right after Superman.
Okay.
There's a bunch of others.
I saw that you got a Captain America shield on your.
Yeah, in the background there.
Yeah. Definitely. Most of the characters. Thor, I could live without. But yeah, most of the main, the main Marvel characters. I kind of dabbled at Spider-Man in a couple of novelizations, in 19...
And you wrote a Hulk novel as well, I think. Is that right?
Well, it was they were both. One was Spider-Man, and the other one was Spider-Man and the Hulk.
Yeah.
Right.
It was, it was in the Marvel novel series from 1979.
I think it's interesting that the two characters you pick from each company are the characters of all of their, all of the characters that they have. They're the two that are the ones that inspire hope.
Yeah, I mean, Cap's kind of Superman for the Marvel universe in my head sometimes,
Yeah, I mean, their motives are presented differently, but they're very similar. I mean, absolutely. Both are the Boy Scout goody two shoes of their respective universes.
Yeah, definitely. Cool.
And that's what I want that's what I wanted my comic book heroes to be. I wanted them to be heroes. The anti-hero stuff in comic, I mean, I can read it and enjoy it and respect it and understand it, but it's not the same. These guys are heroes. I grew up when when heroes were heroes, and you didn't bother. There was no ambiguity. Nowadays it's like, is Batman psycho? Well, yeah. Back when back in the 90s, no, he wasn't psycho. He was, please, a little disturbed. Let's face it, because in all of human history, no one, repeat, no one has ever gone out in a cape and costume at night to fight crime.
Yeah.
Ever. You know why? Because it's a stupid idea.
You'd probably get arrested or be considered to be a bit kinky.
Killed.
Yeah.
You'd get killed because you're not Batman, and you don't have all this, you don't have make-believe comic book science to save you from a bashed-in skull when you get hit with a crowbar.
Yeah. I can imagine some crazy person's probably done it. Yeah.
I mean,
not successfully.
I can't even. I mean, people have done it as stunts and stuff, but I can't even find examples of of people who were insane, crazy people who went out and do it. I mean, I've looked for it because I like pointing out that in all of human history, nobody has ever done this thing.
Yeah.
There was a chap called Phoenix Jones who went out dressed up as a superhero, and obviously he didn't do the same kind of thing. He just walked around the streets and stopped
Right.
people getting into trouble. But yeah, none of that kind of running around the rooftops.
No,
stuff.
no, because
You're banging trouble. You're going to die day one if you do that rooftop thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to happen. Yeah.
Please. I mean, so all that stuff. I reached a point as a reader that prevented. I couldn't suspend my reality that much.
Yeah.
Disbelief that much anymore.
Cool. Well, we've kept you. You've been very kind, Paul.
Yes, Paul, you've been a legend, man.
But I think we need to just talk about your current projects now. I'm enjoying that people who I've admired for years, like yourself and Mike Grell, and a lot of other creators, are using Kickstarter as a platform to get their stories out there. Now, I know you've been successful on Kickstarter quite a few times now, and you've got a few books come out on there. I backed a few of them. How's that working for you as a platform? Are you enjoying it? Is it nice to just get stories out there? Did you want to talk about what you've had on the go?
Well, the latest one, which just ended like a week or so, a week and a half back, it's from a book called Direct Conversations: Talks with Fellow DC Comics Bronze Age Creators.
Brilliant.
I sat down over the summer and I did interviews with, just 10 old friends that I got into the comic book business with at around the same time. So that I've done on Kickstarter. I've done a few books just out of pocket. I mean, frankly, these days, with the resources available and print on demand.
Yeah.
Really, it really doesn't cost a lot to publish a book. You can do it for a few $100s. This one I wanted to give a little bit more attention to. So I did a Kickstarter. And it did well. I did about 160% of goal, so I'm very pleased with that.
Yeah, it's great looking, great, man. Did you want to say some of the names of the people you interviewed?
Yes.
Yeah.
In alphabetic order, we have Jack C. Harris, Bob Rozakis. Oh, that's not alphabetical, is it? What is the order in which I did them? That's right, this list.
Okay.
All right, Jack C. Harris, Bob Rozakis, Anthony Tolin, Michael Uslan, Steve Mitchell, Joe Staten, Paul Levitz, Howard Chaykin, Tony Isabella, and Bob Toomey.
Brilliant. Yeah. So they're people you interviewed. So for people who don't know, you used to do, when you were editorial at DC, I'm guessing, or on staff there, you would do the DC Direct Currents,
yes.
Which changed in format. At one point it was a magazine, and interviews from that you've done a book on, which is where Direct Comments comes from. Is that right?
Yes. There was the comic shop giveaway called DC Direct Currents.
Yeah.
And it was, the comic book size. It was printed on Mando paper and color. And I wrote that for, that version of it ran for over 90 issues. I wrote practically all of those. And I had written earlier incarnations back to the 70s. But anyway, each month we would highlight, whatever new project was coming along. And as part of that, I would do an interview for a feature article in the thing about a creator. So, if it was a Robin, the Robin miniseries, I talked to Chuck Dixon or whatever. And I didn't run them as straight interviews, as question answer interviews. I would excerpt quotes and use them to write a feature piece. And so most of the interviews went unused. And a few years ago, I found an old 3.5-inch floppy disk in the closet, and on it were the raw transcripts of interviews for 22 of those interviews. So I was able to take those and edit them and I footnoted those heavily. Those interviews, because it was interviews that took place 30 years ago about things that had happened 40 years before that. So lots of footnotes.
But anyway, yeah. So there's
So the new one is kind of a spiritual successor to that one.
Yeah. Direct Conversations were all new interviews with these 10 people. And the common link was, I've known them for 47, 48 years or more, all of them, and worked with just about everybody in some form or another over the years. So, and we got into the business at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was kind of that it was a very important period because, as I said before, we were the first generation of fans to come in and start working in the business. And we were also the first generation to be invited in and trained. DC had apprentice programs. DC had the Junior Woodchucks. Marvel would bring in, all these young guys to be assistants, and they would spin them off into editorial jobs and writing gigs and all that. So there hadn't been this many new people coming into the comics business since really the 40s.
Yeah.
And
and it's a period of some great comics. The Bronze Age is our favorite, man. We love it. Yeah,
it was awesome stuff. It was a great time, but it was also a very pivotal time. Everything about the business was changing. We didn't realize it until 20, 30 years later, but the comic book industry that I got into in 1975 was very different than the one I left in 2006.
Yeah. And the comics that are written from back then are now the basis for a lot of movies, TV series, all this sort of thing, aren't they?
Yeah, I've had a few minor characters show up on, the Supergirl show, and they used my version of the new Doom Patrol on the Doom Patrol show.
Yeah.
Peacemaker, which I didn't create, but
you formed him, man. That mini-series has got, all the hallmarks of that TV series already.
James Gunn has been very, very generous in crediting the work that John Ostrander and I did on, Checkmate and Peacemaker and Suicide Squad for inspiration for that stuff. And now that he's in charge of running the movies and TVs and animation, maybe I can convince him to do that Checkmate miniseries.
Oh, that'd be great, man. That would be amazing. I love the design of that. Is incredible.
Yeah.
John Byrne's design of those costumes just looks so good on the page.
Yeah. He did a beautiful job on this.
So what's next for you, man? What have you got planned? You got to have another project up your sleeve, I'm sure.
I've got a couple of 3 things that I'm trying to decide which I want to do next.
Okay.
One's a novel, and the other is a memoirish sort of thing. So
okay.
I'm debating. I have
which one do you give? Okay.
I have about 110,000 words of a memoir.
Okay.
Insane. Well, I reached a point where it was like, and then I edited, and then I wrote, and then I edited, and it's like, okay, this is boring. But I'm going to go back, and I'm going back and looking at it and trying to find a point. And if I do, I will.
Well, there's a lot of comics memoirs out there, aren't there? I know Dave Gibbons is just about to release one. Pat Mills had one out recently. There's quite a few. It's quite the hotness at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, but I had done a previous one about the truth of my life, and I sent it to my agent, and he went, "This isn't going to fly. You're not famous enough for anybody to care about how you were reviewed."
Oh no!
Like, wow, I need a new agent.
Right, good. And where can we find you on social media and online, all that sort of thing?
Well, I am on Facebook and Twitter under my own name. And you can also find me at my website is paulkupperberg.com. Easy enough. And also my stuff is findable on crazy8press.com.
Cool. And you're on Instagram as well, I think, Paul, aren't you?
I am on Instagram. I don't do much on Instagram.
Okay.
Although I may have to. Who knows? I may be forced to change out of political correctness to avoid Elon Musk. But
Paul, this has been an absolute privilege, man. I was so excited
cheers,
for this.
Dude,
yeah, we really appreciate it, and thanks so much.
Go forth and check out Paul's work.
Yeah,
you won't look back.
Thanks a lot. It's been fun.
And there you have it, folks. A bit of a longer interview, that one, but Well
worth it though. Could have gone 4
great.
times.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. It's completely. Tony is so excited. He's a little under the weather today, aren't you, Tony?
I got a bit of man flu, but I overcome it. Paul helped me overcome it.
Yeah, there you go. Comics are healing. You see?
Yeah,
they are healing. But thank you to Paul for joining us. I was just sat back, just listening. I was just like, I'll just take all this.
Yeah.
And we hope you enjoyed that as well. I'm sure you're going to enjoy the comics that we're going to talk about in a bit that you should check out. But before we do that, do we have any shout outs, gents?
I've only got the one. So this Thursday, if you're listening to this on the day of release, Thursday the 10th of November, 6 to 7 p.m. at Gosh, it's the Strangest signing. There'll be a lot of chuckleheads at that, including Mr. Falp, and Eddie will be there, and a lot of good guys. So go to the Gosh site, or go follow them on Twitter, wherever it is you find them, if Twitter still exists by the time we say this. And you'll be able to see it. And the poster is done by Adam. Mr. Falp has done the poster, and he's promised me a copy. He's going to save me a copy of it because it's a cracker. But yeah, so that should be great. I mean, Strangers is the hotness. We've had Eddie on the show. I met Eddie a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it's going to be a great signing at Gosh. So go along to that. That's my only one.
Dan, you got one?
Yes, I've got a few Kickstarters and a bit of nepotism. So we've got Avery Hill Publishing, Spring 2023 line.
Oh, yeah.
3 exciting books. Pet Peeves by Nicole. I'm just going to give you the titles. Pet Peeves, Macbeth, and Big Ugly, because I'm going to murder the names. And that's cracking on right now. We've got 12 days to go.
Was it a quick one, that? I barely thought that had just come out.
I think so too. I think it's quite quick on this. So if you you better get moving, because by the time it comes out, you only have 11 days. Going out like a cob on it. We've got Shadows by Aaron Rackley and Dan Harris. That's cracking on. That's just cracked the halfway target. Got about another week to go on that. And it doesn't need my help in any way whatsoever. We've got Killtopia, the final chapter, encapsulated in issues 1 to 5. Cyberpunk Tokyo becomes a high-tech battleground as Japan's deadliest bounty hunters fight to claim the world's first sentient mecha. It's bust through its target goal, so back that, and you'll get some of this awesome cyberpunk action. Got to say, Clark Bint's artwork on this, fucking hell, it's good. It's really good, really good. And Clark often takes part in stuff on the Slack group. So hello, Clark.
It's the first time in about 4 years I'm not backing anything at the moment on Kickstarter.
Really?
I'll have to go and back that now. Yeah, I can't have that. Yeah.
I was just saying, I was going through I've got that on Kickstarter, but that hasn't come through. I messaged someone and said, I haven't got this yet. And then I looked, and then their messages were like, we're really sorry this hasn't come out yet. We're really behind. And I wrote another message and sorry, I've just read your update. Going to see come across that one of those.
That's the way it is sometimes, though. Sometimes the updates, mine get lost.
I don't read them all. Fucking hell. No. I just check to see if it's the actual comic being sent to me.
Yeah.
And I don't read it.
Yeah.
I think you should just, on the campaign, you do a message to all backers and say, here is the digital link. You don't need to email
put that
in
the title. Yeah.
Digital link to comic, and then if they miss it in a couple of months' time, they can go back and grab it, because it's really easy to get to. Yeah. And I appeared on the Icecast Live.
Oh yeah, this is good, man. I enjoyed this.
Interesting. Talking about Viper, which is I keep on pushing to get on Kickstarter. Talked for an hour. Talked about the comic. Talked about 80s stuff. Had some laughs and jokes.
You look very sexy, Dan.
Oh,
you
thanks.
Did, and you're growing a moustache, which I found.
Yeah. That was like the talk of the town on Thursday when I walked into the office. And they said, "You doing that for Movember?" I went, "No."
I hate Movember.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a hard one to find. So if you just do the Icecast and Viper Special or Icecast Dan Butcher, it should pop up, and it's give it a go. It's good. I quite like the format of the host talking and then a chap pulling up videos to watch as you go through.
He's got like an assistant, isn't he? Who does it for him?
Yeah, there's a chap called Sam that works in the background, and
yeah,
as he's sort of doing stuff, that gets pulled up on screen.
Yeah,
so
very good. Let's watch a bit of the Fall Guy and all sorts of things.
Yeah. And the Unknown Stuntman.
Yeah, no monetization in that show. Speaking of shows, of course, this weekend, the 12th and 13th is the big one, Thought Bubble Comic Convention. 12th and 13th of November in Harrogate. Tickets are on sale now, or perhaps you've already got your tickets, or you're going up there. There is of course, the Thought Bubble Festival is just been running since beginning of November. The convention is this weekend. Now there is a list of. There are quite a few guests and exhibitors, friends of the show, and more. But some of the guests here, for instance, I'll just read off some names: Raphael Albuquerque, Philip and Shelley Bond, Nick Brokenshire.
Nice.
Aaron Campbell, the Etherington brothers, Gary Erskine, Sarah Grayley, Kieran Gillan, Jock, Tula Lote, Leah Moore, she'll murder me if I'm on that. Sean Phillips, as soon as we're talking about Sean Phillips, John Reppion, we've got Rachel Smith, Cy Spurrier, Richard Starkings, Raina Telgemeier. That's quite a get because that's
Is Simone going. Gail Simone's.
Gail Simone's
I think
going. Casper
Scott
Wingard,
Snyder.
Chris Wild Goose.
The Goose is there.
Yeah. The Goose
Did you
is
say
there.
that? Did you say that Gary Erskine's going?
Yes.
Well, that's a surprise, isn't it? I didn't know he did guns.
Yeah. Ram V, G. Willow Wilson, and Martin Simmons. That's
Good stuff. He's got some OA with him. Go and buy some.
Man, you bet if I can get in there quick.
Yeah. Go in there and get them. Now, I'm just going to randomly pick a few exhibitors. There is an enormous amount of exhibitors, as always. We're not going this year, so that's why I'm just chucking out some names so you can add them to your lists. But do what I do when it comes to comic conventions and or music festivals, whenever I go back to one of them. Go to thoughtbubblefestival.com and make a little shopping list, because all of these links go to the websites and stuff anyway. So I've already got an idea in my head of some of the stuff I'm going to buy before I even get there. So as I'll have FOMO, go and get some of this awesome stuff and tell me, we're looking forward to seeing the con halls. But for instance, we got Ahmed Rafet, Afterlight Comics. There'll be so much horror comics there if you want to get them. Black Lodge Press, Black Moth Eyes, Bog-Eyed Books, Cabin Boy Studio. I'm just going to roll down. Chris Mole, Chris Askham, Chris Boldy. So many Chris's. Claude TC does amazing.
We like his stuff.
Yeah. Dave Cook.
Oh
yes.
Who we were just talking about there. Dan White. Dan Charnley's going to be there.
Oh, nice.
So
I missed Dan at the lakes. I want to see him.
Yeah, definitely catch up with this. Awesome.
Get on his Substack. It's great.
Yeah, and there's awesome sort of horror artwork happening there.
Yeah.
What else we got here? We got Fraser Geisen, Felix Mial, Galactic Comics, Nash Comics. I almost said Nosh.
That sound all right.
God's Teeth, Gustavo Vargas, of course. Vargas.
He's taking commissions, isn't he? I think.
Yeah.
He is. Yeah, they're looking.
Get on that, because next year he'll be on the guest name. I'll put.
I've
money
got a couple
on
of. I've got a couple of frame pieces of his.
He'll be on the guest list. I'll put money on that.
Gareth Hopkins is there selling.
Nice.
Yeah.
His book, which completely escapes me now. Razor Blade.
Sweet Razor.
I'm just going to sit here and listen to you fucking try and do it.
Sweet Jelly Baby Monkey Trampolines.
Big thanks to him, by the way, for putting us in the back of his book. Thank you.
Cheers, Gareth.
Yeah. We love him with the power of 1,000 suns. Also, the boys from Horde Comics will be there. Hawk and Cleaver, Hellbound Media. You know what you did. Hocus Pocus. Gareth Slightholme. Please go and buy loads of stuff from Gareth. He's one of my favourite artists. A name that I just love. Joe and his killer robot dad. Well, I mean, why wouldn't you want to go to a table that's got that? Katie Whittle, Catherine Rose, Julie Campbell, Catherine Briggs.
Catherine's there. We had Catherine on about 4 years ago.
Wow.
Remember, she moved to the States, didn't she? She must be back then, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I like her work.
Maybe. James Lawrence is going to be there. Luke Hyde, Rob Luckett, who I spoke to about Bumstorm.
Bumstorm, great comic.
Bumstorm, great name as well.
Yeah, MD Penman, Mr. Hope, the Mindless Ones and the Silence Pod are going to be there. Morbid Comics, which could be as many comics as you want. This is good. Ned Hartley. I'm just going to quickly run through a bunch now. Ned Hartley, our mate Pete Dory's going to be there. Paula Lucas, Philip Apley. I'm just picking names out of a hat now.
Do 5 more.
Okay, 5 more. Then we've got Rafa Labosco, brilliant artist. Sarah
Barry
Millman.
Yes, Milmo.
Yeah. Sammy Ward. There is. I'm just scrolling down. How many have I got, Dan?
Three more.
Two more.
Three more.
Three more. Stephen Ingram's going to be there.
Yeah, all good. Good lad.
Yeah. Tim Bird. And finally, I'm going to pick out Will Kirkby because I bought something from him. The Wine and Zine gang.
There as well.
Yeah.
Is Barry Cheeseman there this year?
Barry Cheeseman's everywhere, but we never see him.
If they wanted a full list, Vince, where could they go to find that?
They could go to thoughtbubblefestival.com.
Ah.
Are you two on acid or something?
No, this is what it's like being professional, Tony. You should try it.
I hope that geezer's selling those signs back next year.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah.
Smash the patriarchy. I want to get one of them. I forgot to get a sign.
So, of course, there's exhibitors, there's maps, there's debuting book, there's all of this good stuff. ThoughtBubbleFestival.com. I mean, hope it really goes well, and the Thought Bubble guys, they really work hard to put on a good festival weekend. So
I keep getting emails, don't you, from saying, "Oh, are you ready to book your hotel in Harrogate?" And I'm like, "I'm not going." Stop emailing me.
Yeah. But no, we look forward to hearing about the new books that have been arriving and stuff, because I'm sure there's going to be lots that I'm going to add to my wish list. So definitely thoughtbubblefestival.com. Go there, get your tickets. I know a lot of people
don't do acid.
Yeah, don't do drugs. Drugs are for mugs.
Yeah,
and mugs are only good for tea and coffee. I'm not going to be a fascist.
Green tea.
Green tea. Oh, I wish I
drinks that. It's like piss.
I wish I liked fruit teas, but I just don't.
Fruit teas, man, smell great, and then you taste it just
like drinking wee wee.
Yeah, we've all done that. And
what? No, we haven't.
Accidentally.
Yeah, I think it was last week when.
Was it? We drank wee wee.
No, last week I posed a question about the bucket of piss being thrown over you at Halloween.
Yeah.
Warm or cold?
Warm or cold? Always warm. Like a Lemsip. Yeah. Anyway, right.
You're not winning either one of those scenarios.
Yeah, but I don't think you ever win when someone
thrown a bucket of piss over you.
No. Unless you're on
Depends
fire.
when you do the wee, isn't it? Sometimes during the day it's like a lighter colour, isn't it?
Yeah.
What fucking film's that from? So can you get sick drinking your own piss? He goes, yeah, I think you can. So
Electric Blue 8.
And he goes, what, even your own? So,
oh God, what is that?
I can't remember what film that is.
Oh God, I'm gonna be thinking about
your own.
Yeah. Oh God. I can't think about that now. Scream it at your iPhones, folks, while you're listening to this, or whatever device.
I've never done it.
No.
Yeah. Oh right, now's the time when you say it. Anyway,
you two weirdos. I'm not doing that.
Anyway, I don't drink my own. Right.
Good man.
I don't drink. Oh God, I feel sick. While I'm being sick, someone recommend a comic to our lovely listeners.
Can I recommend one? I think we've all got.
Yes.
And, it's Reject All by David Robertson. I like to think of this as kind of like a stand-up routine of like an observational comedy and stream of consciousness kind of comics. And they can be like 1-page comics, 3-page sort of muses on Star Wars and stuff like that. And Dave's teamed up with a myriad of artists and humorous, insightful. Some you're very fond of Star Wars, aren't you?
He loves Star Wars, doesn't he, Dave? Yeah.
Which I've got no hate for at all. I've kind of Star Wars they've kind of lost me as a fan. But
it's because they keep casting Captain Kirk as someone else, isn't it?
Yeah, biddy.
Yeah.
The story of Liam Neeson going around on the bus shooting everyone was great. I really enjoyed that and all the different spaceships. But if you go to Friday Comics, David Robertson, and you can go check out all the other books he's got, which there's a list of in the front, and there's bloody loads. So go check that out. And I presume he'll be popping up in the next That Comic Smell anthology.
That's not long off, I think.
Yeah.
So who are the artists? I think Helena's in that as well, isn't she?
Helena's in that. You put me on the spot there, T.
Oh, sorry, babes.
Sorry.
How
unlike
dare
you.
Yeah.
Throw me to the wolves. Some are only initials, so I'm going to have a hard time doing that.
Oh, okay.
Cleo Ding, Helena, Francesca
Is the
Mans.
Dobster in it?
I'm not too sure actually.
What about the Dobster? Is he there? Or
Neil Patterson,
What, Bob Dobbs?
the
Abby White,
Dobberella? What, Dobberoni? Is he in it?
Cherish York. That's the real name, and that's in the book.
That's a made-up name, isn't it?
And many more.
Dave's a liar. They're made-up names.
There's a list of them at the back. I could have gone through,
okay.
but I didn't. So,
Well, there you go.
there you go. Don't take that personally if I didn't mention your name.
They will.
Or do. I don't care.
Tony, what would you like to recommend?
So I advertised our wares like the cheap prostitutes that we are on the Strangers Discord. And said, if anyone's got a book, send it our way. We'll have a little look at it. And I got a comic through just the other day called Endangered African Hornman and Juggy. 52 pages, a mix of colour and black and white. It's an anthology, all different creators. Now, I'm just going to say to you, I'm going to read the title out to you again, and I'm going to ask if you can figure out who these characters actually are. So, Endangered African Hornman, who would that be? If this is a pastiche on two characters already existing within the Marvel Universe. Endangered African Rhino.
Yeah,
Well done, Rhino. And the second one is easier, Juggy.
Juggernaut.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. So it's a pastiche, a homage, a satire of Rhino and Juggernaut, who do get off with each other a couple of times in the comics. It's an anthology of 11 stories and 4 pin-ups. It includes a work of 17 creators, all who are from the Ink and Drink Long Beach Discord group. It got sent to me by I think he's like the editor or the bloke, one of the people who runs it, Erwin Papa, who, along with his buddies June the Goon and Roshi, started a drink and draw group, creative community in Long Beach in South California. And then when the lockdown hit, a bit like our group actually, this is sort of the parallels for this to DUI. They moved online and became a weekly online hangout, and it spread out throughout the US. So a lot of these people are from different parts of the US, and it's currently now on Kickstarter. But I got to see an early copy of it. It's just, you know how brilliant I am with computers, guys. It was like a massive file. It took ages to download, and it kept making my computer stop. But it is worth reading. A bit like our DUI. It's a mixed bag of styles and approaches, if you see what I mean. I'm just going to mention a couple of my favourites. So the Desert Carnales, I think it's how you say it, by Carlos and Rafa Flores. And it's got the people who are very similar to the Rhino and the Juggernaut. They're in the desert, and they're overshadowed by this creature who's sort of towering over them, and they're bickering about their recent poor life choices, about robbing a bank and getting involved in a thing as Mexican wrestlers. And then you realise that the monster that's overshadowing them is this huge sentinel that is speaking in Spanish, and it's just kind of funny, just a bit weird, made me laugh. The art's quite nice, the colouring in it is good, and then it sort of takes off, turns into a bit of a battle. 2 versus 1, which is by somebody called Jason Lego, which is just fucking batshit crazily drawn. I don't really know how to describe it. It's like someone's just attacked a page. But it's got it's full of ink splatters and cloud effects and stuff like that, you know. And it's a story of a Wolverine style character fighting the Juggernaut, which is kind of cool. Like I said, there's a couple of stories in this where Juggernaut and Wolverine style characters get off with each other, and one where one has sex with the other one. You can guess who's who. There's in Papa's, I think might be my favorite, is a story called Clobbered, which is right at the back, and it's done in art styles that are homages to already existing stories. There's almost like She-Hulk appears in it, and there's almost like an homage in panel size and layout to a She-Hulk story. And She-Hulk grabs the Rhino by his balls in the last panel, which made me giggle. But it's an anthology. Look, it's an anthology. We are, you know,
mixed bag.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty good hit rate in this one. It's lovely to see that it's done so well on Kickstarter. It's lovely to see that this little group of community of people are in on this like single joke, and it just makes me laugh constantly. You know, the sort of perversion of these two sort of super macho, bulked out characters, and they put them in all these stupid situations. But yeah, it's really good. You can find it on Kickstarter at the moment. Endangered African Hornman and Juggy. There you go. That's my first one.
So Slack has become host to kind of like this terrorist cells of comic creators, hasn't it? Where
they're doing what they like.
Like a decentralized network that all kind of aim to do the same thing, but don't get in contact with one another. Just make comics.
Fuck around. Yeah. I kind of like that. You know.
Yeah.
Good. Who's next? Vincenzo?
Well, my one is one that I wanted to talk about for a couple of weeks, but I almost talked about it last week, but it was a Halloween episode. This is a book that Danny from OK Comics posts up about it, I immediately
She's always reliable, isn't she?
Yeah. And it was going up in the store. I immediately saw that cover and I thought, what is that? I need to find out more about it.
Treat myself to that thought, Vincenzo.
Yes. I took a rare punt on a hardcover book, and it is glorious. It is from Dark Horse Books. It is from Daniel Friedman and renowned illustrator Robert Samalin. I hope I said that right. And it is called Kali, which it is, as it says on the back of the book, a non-stop, high-octane, existential action spectacle. Ooh, what a collection of words. Synopsis is, stabbed in the back, poisoned and left for dead by her own biker gang, Callie sets off on a one-way road of vengeance across a war-torn desert battlefield, with impending doom coursing through her veins and a fascist army hot on her tail. Callie will stop at nothing to get her revenge, even if it's the last thing she ever does. Now, the way this... Spoilers, this book's fucking awesome. And definitely one of near the top of like books I've read this year in terms of the enjoyment I had. I just absolutely rinsed through it, and there's many reasons for it. If I was to sort of describe it to you, the feel of it, it has that sense of those post-apocalyptic exploitation films that, like, you know, Spain,
I know the ones,
or Italy sort of made.
They sort of did the Mad Max style rip-off.
Yeah,
stuff.
Oh yeah, I like all that stuff. Yeah.
There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of the Grindhouse going on about it, like the stylistically the setup for this story. But if you imagine if it was like that, but it has the multi-million-dollar Hollywood budget, do you know what I mean? It's almost like that put into a book, and it's just it just rolls from page one. Firstly, that the artwork's absolutely stunning, and it's definitely written in a way to let the artwork sing as well. This is an oversized hardcover, so this feels like a big European book.
Yeah, it looks like an album, doesn't it?
Yeah, in fact, everything about it felt to me like it was a European. It came from Europe Comics rather than anything else. And it starts off certainly in the big cinematic style, like the first page is just 4 widescreen sort of panels of close-ups of Callie's hands handcuffed behind her back, then her boots scuffing through the dirt. Then the third panel is you can see part of a chain around her neck and a knife still sticking out of her back, and then she's like part of like this chain gang of prisoners of war that are just being. And then the next 2 pages are a double splash page of looks like a sort of Utah Valley, that kind of like epic sort of. It's that sort of landscape, But then it moves into like a sort of. It's weird. There's almost like a. It's almost like a war film sort of backdrop, with a biker gang revenge story running through it. It's a fictionalized sort of, there's definitely like there's a fascist war element, army element. There's lots of stuff going on that they kind of talk about in the background, but the story you're following is just this person that has been left for dead, fucked over, and they want to get back at the people who left them for dead, betrayed them. The script is just, it crackles all the way through. Like for instance, she's captured at one point and they're asking her name, and there's a beautiful sort of page of her sort of sitting there, and like just the look of Callie is just brilliant as well. Like long dark hair, leather, biker leather jacket. She's got like these leather chaps and like she's got this t-shirt which is like looks like bones, like ribs, like a rib cage kind of thing. So immediately you've got an iconic look to your character, and through the first like 10-15 page, well, about 10 pages of the book, she's still got a flick knife stuck in her left shoulder blade from when she was betrayed.
I fucking love when it's a Wolverine thing, isn't it? When he's walking around, he's got all fucking knives and arrows sticking out of him.
Yeah, I mean, you love see that. It on the cover as well, like on the cover, the only thing that's sort of different between her look between the cover and the rest of the book is she doesn't have a name on the back of her jacket. She's got the biker gang name, and like when the army are talking to her, they say like, why were you captured? And she says, I wasn't captured, I was betrayed. They tried to kill me, but I got away. Woke up with a chain around my neck. As for what's wrong with me, my own gang stabbed me in the back with my own goddamn knife. If I ever see them again, I'm taking their heads. And from there's a wonderful sort of action scene. Some of this feels almost very like Garth Ennis Punisher Max in the way it's paced.
Oh, nice.
And sort of float and sort of rolls out as well. And as she's on this path of vengeance and taking out military people, there's like an action scene with a train, and you're getting flashbacks to. It drip feeds bits of like the backstory, and it's only in the end you really get the revelations of stuff which kind of twist and change your opinion on things. And it does have some psychedelics as well in it. There's a double page spread where she has a bit of she's been poisoned, and there's a bit of a hallucination where she's seeing someone from her past talking to her, but no matter how much she's sort of beating them up, like she cuts their face and their face peels open and another version of them crawls out. So there's loads of there's weirdness going on. Yeah. I think now that I've said it, like it's just that sort of feel I had when I was reading like Sarah from Garth Ennis or some of or the Platoon.
Oh yeah,
that kind of feel. There's some of the, you know how you with some of the artwork in those books, like there's a double page spread which looks glorious this size of her in this. I think it's 2 or 3 spreads in a row, and she's sort of in a ditch waiting for these these troops to like approach, and like so she can set off a bomb. But over those spreads, you can see the whole battlefield, and it's just absolute carnage. And then the bottom, it's almost like a Where's Wally. In the bottom right hand corner, there's her in this ditch, and you just see the troops getting closer over 3 spreads. Like there must have been, to have that sort of real estate to play with. You don't have that luxury, but I'm so glad this book does it. That allows the artwork to do it, because it gives it so much more of an epic scale. You couldn't do it with every story, but this book is just a wonder to do things like that. It's a big, epic, widescreen sort of interpretation of a story that we're probably used to being small screen exploitation type stuff. So it's my highest recommendation, one of my books of the year. I'm so glad I took a punt on it, and it came out,
brilliant! That's great.
It came out of nowhere. So just get.
I might get this then.
Yeah.
It's expensive. How much is it?
It was about £25, I think. £25, something like that. Yeah, it's a big hardcover book. There's not.
You hit yourself in the face with it earlier, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. When I showed them, and it caught me right on the side of the head, like the edge of it.
To read the book, you got as a blood sacrifice.
Yeah.
That's how we work on his podcast.
The book also has, like, after the story's finished, it has like the making of Kali as well, where you see like reference, sketches, photos, the layouts, the script, just lots of like character designs. So there's lots of back matter in the back, and like there's also like a double page spread, which is the artist has taken a photo. One thing I love, and they're all original art pages, because there's a double page spread that's just someone's taken a photo of all of the original pages on their desk. And it's like, oh god, glorious stuff. So that's my recommendation.
Nice work.
Which I've wanted to talk about for a while, and that's why, because I just wanted to rant about it. Okay, do we have any others before we sign off?
Should I do my one? I've got one more, but I can leave it till next week.
No, do it. It's all right.
Yeah. Okay,
it's mine's quickie. So
a back something I backed on Kickstarter called Power Broker. I got issue 1 and 2 from this. And 30 years ago, the secret to superpower and abilities was unlocked. Geneticists were hailed as heroes, as the promise of a new age of human achievement shined bright. Instead, their work was quickly commercialized, and the foundation of society buckled beneath the deluge of black market superpowered beings. In response, a task force of professional supermen was commissioned to police the city of Potentia and neutralize this growing threat. They call themselves Power Brokers. That's a good synopsis. Essentially, what it is like. In this kind of timeline, is slightly kind of futuristic, cyberpunk-esque. You can buy superpowers, but they're ridiculously expensive. So some people go like a black market route and buy dodgy ones, and sometimes they go a bit wacky. And this is where these power brokers have to step in, sort of put them down, as it were. Where the kind of the story ends off in the end of the first issue is someone they take down. They realize that they've done this to him before, and when you get caught doing this, they put like a blocker in your spine that stops you ever getting superpowers again. But this guy has had it like removed or amended somehow, so he's gone in for another treatment, and that's the beginning of the sort of mystery of working out who has got around this tech, why they done it, and where it's going to go. It won't give too much away from the second issue, but it's got an absolutely fucking horrible villain, but which is superb at the same time as kind of this thing that's like three bodies made out of bubble gum. Well, they're all cycloptic, and they kind of want to eat people, and they're like the weird childlike creatures of the main bad guy, and they're great, really good characters. So I'd love to see where they go. It's written by I've just shut down the fucking PDF, which is good. Let me just quickly
the Dobster.
It's put out by Studios, which is Unlikely Heroes. It's written by Todd Vincino, artwork by John Kutzer, lettering by HTE, published by Unlikely Hero Studio. The artwork in this is fucking something else. It's really action packed. The only thing I would say about it is it feels like at times it needs to breathe a little, because it's just everything's action, lettering, just full on. And do you know what I mean? Like sometimes you just need a bit of breathing room. For me, this is a completely subjective, so you may not take that away from it, but lovely figure work, perspective, everything. Yeah, good stuff. So go check that out. I think it's a limited series or it's an ongoing, but that's Power Broker by Unlikely Hero Studios. Go check it out.
Cool.
Nice. And Tony, do you have another one, or is that?
I have, yeah. It's a very quick one. It's the Inkdrop by my boy Adam Falp. It's a small zine format. It comes in a brown envelope, as is common with a lot of our comics. But this one instead has got the cover replicated on the front of the envelope as well in black ink. It's a black and white comic. And then it's sealed, so you have to open this small envelope and take this zine out. And the zine is a story. It's kind of a weird story of addiction, but also creativity. So there's this man, and the cover has got a man about, with like an ink dropper, like an eye drop thing. He's about to drop ink into his eyeball. And what it says about that, and you see what he does is he drops ink into it, and then he's kind of crawling as the comic continues. He's kind of crawling across a desert landscape, and as he gets closer to the reader, the camera, whatever you're going to call it, you see that there's a star field within the mass of ink that's now formulating this massive eyeball of his, and the reader then falls into this star field in a very sort of 2001 kind of effect, and of course, because it's Adam and it's us, Adam's sort of sensibilities, the story then continues where you come out of the star field and a woman forms in front of you, and of course she's naked with a massive bush.
Yes.
It's a really interesting approach to a comic, which you could read very quickly and mistake what I think it's about. But there's certainly metaphors there to, let's say, addiction. You've got this almost like the ink is an addiction. You've got a metaphor with creativity, and the source point of comics and stuff like that, and also links to the natural world, because at one point this naked lady she finds a waterfall of ink, and she goes and stands underneath it. And maybe I think do you remember the character that Adam wrote about, which is a kind of pseudo version of himself from the comic Deadlines? Do you remember about how he was pleasuring a lady with one hand whilst inking a new page for his comic with the other? Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Just fucking brilliant. And then it ends up with this big sort of fold out. Anyone who knows Adam, he knows he's obsessed with format. So the last page folds out to be almost like to fold out to be a poster in a way.
Okay.
And it's maybe there's a sort of metaphor around life and death and the relation to comics. And I think I'll probably leave you to read it and make your own mind up. But it's just full on undiluted Falp in a comic. It's just brilliant. I love reading this stuff he does. He just does it, He comes to conventions and he says, I've got this new comic out. So you haven't told me anything about this comic. And he did it that week. This is what happened with Inkdrop. I don't think it's on our website. I think probably the best way you're going to get it is by going to the signing on Thursday. I don't think there's a big print run. I've got a copy, which I got at Nottingham, and I think a few people have picked one up, but it's not a huge print run. The same as our Tijuana Bible thing, Graphic Gospels. The only way you're going to get it is by finding us and getting a copy.
But that's part of the thing, isn't it? Like you got.
It really is.
Yeah. It's a moment in time, and if you're not there,
we're not.
Got it.
We're not looking to do huge print runs and sell them to idiotic Joe Public, and put them on the shelves of W.H. Smith's. This is an artistic moment. You're right, man. This is something of a sort of minor comics happening. Is when we put this stuff out, and Adam's the same. And this is I love seeing this stuff from him because he just puts it on the table. I go, what is that? He goes, oh, I forgot to tell you about it. I did that this week. And you read it, and it's just brilliant. I just love it. But there you go. The Inkdrop. Find it where you may. There you go.
Nice one.
There you go. So go forth and find all of these books wherever you may. And all we care about is that you found us. So we hope you enjoyed this episode this week. Learned a lot, loved a lot, laughed a lot, and probably enjoyed the interview and just put up with the rest.
Go and read some Paul Kupperberg comics. Go and buy some of the books he puts out because they're just gold mines. They're just brilliant.
I really want to pick up that book on the writing.
Yeah, it's just funny. He writes like we just had that conversation with him. It's very, very friendly. Before I've never spoke to the dude before, but I just had warmed to him previous to his speaking. Yeah. And he's brilliant at getting back to you. I love people who come on this show who just want to have a chat with you about comics during the day on Messenger. It's just brilliant. There you go.
Yeah, so we hope you enjoyed that. And as always, if there's anything you want us to talk about, if you've got any endeavours, any new books or whatever, please get in touch with us. You can email us awesomecomicspod@gmail.com. On the social media at the Awesome Pod, where you can find us wherever. Book of Faces, there's a community group, Awesome Comics Talk. There's the Slack group. Get in touch with us about joining that. There's loads of great channels.
Open to everyone. It's great.
The Awesome Comics Podcast Slack group. Please join it. There's a wonderful community of people over there. Thank you for listening to us on the website awesomecomics.podbean.com. If you listen to us on any other avenues, for instance Apple Podcasts, subscribe and like. It helps the algorithms and all that nonsense help get the word out about it.
We got a new review, didn't we, recently?
Oh, do we?
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, have a look. Yeah, I saw it today.
My ego is so fragile, I'm immediately going to check that out in a second once we finish this. If you listen to us on any other networks like Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, Podnose, Podknife, what other networks are we on, Tony?
We're on Pod Dong Shaman.
Oh, nice. Bob Dobbs.
Yeah. Bob Dobster.
Yeah, the Dobster. Bob Dobbs loves knobs. Right, okay.
Dobbs Dong.
Yes. Where can people... God, dear God. It's always like this at the end of every show. But where can people find our stuff? Tony?
Neveronanything.com. Easy.
Dan?
You can find me on Twitter at Vanguard Comic. At Vanguard Comic, it can be Vanguard at VanguardComic.com. Yeah, I'm still on Twitter. Yeah. If I'm going to leave, I'll tweet about that.
Let's talk about it a lot. Yeah.
And then then come back to see if anyone had noticed me leaving.
Yeah.
Oh, can I also say that the panel I did at Nottingham with Eamon and Alan and Roger Langridge is now available on the NIA feed, so go and have a listen to that. The boys done well on that one. Yeah.
Nice. You can find me on the social media at Jester Diablo, and also if you go to YouTube and look for Safe Space Mothership, we're back from our mid-season hiatus.
Oh, I saw that.
Excellent.
If you want to see some people roll some dice, do some gaming, and have a laugh. Die horribly, or me terrorising people. Whether it's this show or with gaming, I just like to give the people I talk to nightmares. Yeah. I like to lord it over people. What are you saying, Dan? Oh, dear. Anyway, right. Thank you for listening, everyone. We hope you have a brilliant week wherever you are. Have a lovely time at Thought Bubble if you're going there. Have a lovely time at any comic event wherever you are.
Yeah.
Wherever you listen to this, whenever you listen to this, because we hope you're happy, healthy, and doing well. Because we love you very much, don't we, Dan?
Hell yeah.
Don't we, Tony? Yes.
Well, I think my signal dropped out. Then
that's all right. We heard an answer.
Did I sound like a crow suddenly?
Yeah.
Okay. Must be the cold. Must be my cold.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. What does a bad crow sound like, Dan?
Fuck knows. I don't know.
Oh, that just sounds like you. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Nice.
Have a brilliant week. And from Dan, Tony, and myself, read loads of comics, make loads of comics, and as always, Well, I don't know. I can't say. What should they do, gentlemen?
Stay
Stay
awesome.
awesome.
Bye.
God, I sound a bit croaky. Bye.
See you later.
You mean croaky?
Croaky.
What's fucking happening? Why am I a crow now?